It was a chilly October evening in downtown Phoenix when Karen Matthews stepped out of her real estate office. The setting sun cast long shadows between the tall buildings, and the street lights were just beginning to flicker on. At 45 years old, with her designer handbag and perfectly styled blonde hair, Karen considered herself successful and well respected in her community. The day had been particularly difficult. She had lost an important property listing to a competing agent, and her perfectly planned open house had attracted zero potential buyers. Her expensive heels clicked against the sidewalk as she pulled out her phone to order a ride home, a regular driver being unavailable that evening. 3 blocks away, Marcus Williams was just finishing up a conversation with his daughter Sarah on his hands-free device. "Yes, baby girl, I'll make sure to get those extra hours this weekend. Your college books aren't going to buy themselves," he said with a warm chuckle. At 52, Marcus had been driving taxis and now rideshare vehicles for 15 years. His clean driving record and 4.9-star rating spoke volumes about his professionalism and dedication to his work. When the ride request came through on his app, Marcus checked the location. It was only 5 minutes away, and he accepted it immediately. He needed this to be a good evening. Sarah's textbooks for her pre-med courses weren't getting any cheaper, and his younger son's basketball shoes were wearing thin. Marcus pulled his well-maintained 2015 Toyota Camry up to the curb where Karen was waiting. The car wasn't new, but he kept it spotless inside and out. He took pride in his work, making sure every passenger had a comfortable and safe ride. He could see Karen through the window, tapping away at her phone with an impatient expression. "Good evening, ma'am," Marcus called out pleasantly as he confirmed her name. "I'm Marcus, and I'll be your driver today. Would you like me to help with any bags?" Karen looked up from her phone, and her body language changed instantly. Her shoulders tensed, and her grip tightened on her designer handbag. She glanced at her phone screen, then at Marcus, then back at her phone as if double-checking something. "No, I've got it," she replied curtly, opening the back door herself and sliding in as far to the opposite side as possible. Marcus noticed her reaction. He had seen it many times before, but maintained his professional demeanor. He checked the destination address on his app, 4287 Maple Grove Drive, a wealthy suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes away. "It looks like we're heading to Maple Grove," he said, keeping his tone warm and professional. "The app is showing some construction on the usual route, but I know a good alternative that should get us there just as quickly. Would that be all right with you?" Karen's response was barely audible. "Just take the fastest route," she muttered, already busying herself with her phone again. As Marcus pulled away from the curb, he adjusted his rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of Karen in the back seat. She was sitting stiffly, her handbag clutched tightly to her chest, eyes darting between her phone and the car's interior. The air in the vehicle felt heavy with unspoken tension. Marcus turned on some soft jazz, his usual choice for evening rides, keeping the volume low and appropriate. He had learned over the years that music could help ease tension during rides, and jazz tended to be inoffensive to most passengers. "The weather's getting cooler earlier this year," Marcus commented, making a gentle attempt at small talk. It was something he did with all his passengers, part of the service that had earned him so many 5-star ratings. Karen responded with a noncommittal and shifted slightly closer to the door. As they drove through the city streets, Marcus could see Karen in his rearview mirror occasionally shooting worried glances at him and then quickly looking away when their eyes met. Her fingers were busy on her phone, typing rapidly. What Marcus couldn't see was that she was already composing a message to her friend. "In a ride right now." Driver seemed suspicious. "Not sure about this." The city lights flickered past the windows as they drove on, neither passenger nor driver aware that this routine evening ride was about to set in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. As Marcus's Toyota Camry approached the construction zone on Main Street, the orange detour signs glowed brightly in his headlights. He signaled and turned onto Cedar Avenue, a well-lit residential street that would help them avoid the backed-up traffic ahead. This was a route he had used many times before when the main road was under construction. In the back seat, Karen's anxiety spiked as she noticed they were turning away from the main road. She quickly opened her map application, her manicured fingers shaking slightly as she tracked their movement. "Why are we turning here?" she demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. "Ma'am, there's construction ahead on Main Street." Cedar Avenue runs parallel and will get us around the traffic, Marcus explained calmly, maintaining his professional tone despite the accusation he heard in her voice. We'll rejoin Main Street in about 6 blocks. Karen didn't respond, but she started recording a video on her phone, holding it low in her lap. Her heart was racing, though there was no real reason for fear. The street was well lit, with other cars passing by and people walking their dogs on the sidewalks. Marcus noticed Karen's behavior in his rearview mirror and felt a familiar heaviness in his chest. After 15 years of driving, he had developed a sixth sense for when a situation might become problematic. He turned down the jazz music completely and made sure to drive exactly at the speed limit. "Would you prefer I take a different route?" he asked, trying to ease the tension. "I'm happy to follow any path you're most comfortable with." "Just hurry up and get me home," Karen snapped, now openly filming the route. She sent another text to her friend. Driver took a strange turn, recording everything. "Call me in 10 minutes. The next few minutes passed in uncomfortable silence. Marcus kept both hands visible on the steering wheel, something he had learned to do over the years when passengers seemed nervous. He thought about Sarah, his daughter, who was probably studying for her biology exam right now, and his son Marcus Jr., who would be expecting him home for their nightly chess game. As they turned back onto Main Street, exactly where Marcus had said they would, Karen's phone rang loudly. It was her friend Janet calling as requested. "Yes, I'm still in the car," Karen said loudly, clearly wanting Marcus to hear. "No, we took some strange side street. I don't know why." "Yes, I'm recording everything." "No, I'm not comfortable at all." Marcus felt his blood pressure rising, but he kept his voice steady. "Ma'am, we're now back on Main Street, and we're about 12 minutes from your destination. Would you like me to end the ride early? I can drop you at this well-lit gas station where you can arrange another ride." "Don't stop the car," Karen almost shouted, her fear now seeming to feed on itself. "Janet, stay on the phone with me." Marcus could see other drivers glancing at his car at stoplights, probably noticing Karen's obvious distress. He felt the familiar sting of unfair judgment, but kept driving professionally, just as he had done for the past 15 years. The remainder of the ride was filled with Karen's running commentary to Janet, describing every turn and stop they made, her voice getting increasingly agitated despite the normal, safe progress of their journey. She even began taking photos of the car's interior and Marcus's license displayed on the dashboard. When they finally pulled up to Karen's large house in Maple Grove, she practically jumped out of the car before it came to a complete stop. "I got everything recorded," she announced loudly into her phone as she hurried through her front gate. Marcus sat there for a moment after she left, taking deep breaths to calm himself. He had followed every safety protocol, taken a standard detour, and driven perfectly, yet he knew what might come next. He had seen it before, though never quite this dramatic. Before pulling away, he made sure to log the incident with his rideshare company's support team. Passengers seemed distressed about standard construction detour. Maintain professional behavior throughout. Ride recorded on dashcam. What Marcus didn't know was that Karen was already inside her house, fingers flying over her phone's keyboard as she composed a lengthy complaint to the rideshare company, her imagination turning the simple detour into something far more sinister. By morning, both their lives would be turned upside down. Karen woke up early the next morning, her hands still shaking slightly as she remembered the previous night's ride. She sat at her kitchen counter with her untouched coffee, staring at her phone. The morning sunlight streamed through her expensive curtains as she began typing her complaint to the rideshare company. "I feared for my life," she wrote, her imagination working overtime. "The driver deliberately took me down dark streets and wouldn't explain why. He refused to follow the main route and acted suspiciously the entire time. I believe he had bad intentions." She attached the shaky videos she had taken, carefully editing out the parts where Marcus had calmly explained about the construction detour. Her finger hovered over the submit button for just a moment before she pressed it. But Karen didn't stop there. She opened her social media accounts and began sharing her story. "Warning to all women," she typed. "Last night, I experienced the most terrifying ride of my life." She described Marcus, not by name but with enough details that people would know who she meant, painting a picture that barely resembled reality. Meanwhile, Marcus was just starting his morning routine. He made breakfast for his son Marcus Jr., helped him pack his basketball gear for practice, and checked if his daughter Sarah needed a ride to her morning classes at the local college. Everything seemed normal until his phone buzzed with a notification from the rideshare company. Your account has been temporarily suspended pending an investigation. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he read the message. He opened the attached complaint and saw Karen's accusations. His hands started trembling as he read through her elaborate story about feeling threatened and unsafe, about him taking suspicious routes and exhibiting threatening behavior. "Dad, you okay?" Sarah asked, noticing his distress. She was already dressed for her classes, her medical textbooks packed in her bag. "Just a mix-up with work, baby girl," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Nothing to worry about." But there was plenty to worry about. By mid-morning, Karen had also filed a report with the local police department. She sat in the police station, adding new details to her story that hadn't actually happened. "He kept looking at me strangely in the mirror," she told the officer taking her statement. "And I think he deliberately locked the doors." The officer, a young man named Thompson, took detailed notes but couldn't help noticing that the security footage Karen provided didn't show any of the threatening behavior she described. Still, he had to follow procedure. Back at home, Marcus was on the phone with the rideshare company's support team. "I have dashboard camera footage," he explained. The detour was due to construction. It's a well-lit route that many drivers use. But the damage was spreading. Karen's social media post had gone viral in their local community Facebook groups. Comments were piling up, some people sharing their own unfounded fears and prejudices. A few even claimed they'd had similar experiences, though they couldn't provide details. By afternoon, Marcus's regular customers started seeing the posts. Some who had known him for years felt confused and conflicted. Others immediately came to his defense, but their voices were drowned out by the growing online storm. Sarah found out when one of her classmates showed her the viral post during their lunch break. "Dad, there's something you need to see," she said when she called him, her voice shaking. Marcus sat in his parked car outside their small but well-kept house, reading through the comments on Karen's post. 15 years of perfect service, thousands of safe rides, countless thank you messages from satisfied customers, and now this one false accusation threatened to destroy everything. His phone kept buzzing with messages from other drivers warning him about the post. The local driver support group was already organizing to help him, but the damage to his reputation was spreading faster than any defense could travel. What neither Marcus nor Karen knew was that this situation was about to become much bigger than either of them had imagined. The next 24 hours would bring revelations that would force everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and their community. 3 days after Karen's accusations went viral, Marcus sat at his small kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills. His daughter Sarah's college tuition payment was due next week, and his son's basketball tournament fees needed to be paid by Friday. With his rideshare account still suspended, he had no way to earn the money he desperately needed. "Maybe I should postpone next semester," Sarah said quietly, watching her father from the kitchen doorway. She was still in her waitress uniform, having picked up extra shifts at the local diner to help out. "No, baby girl," Marcus replied firmly, though his voice was tired. "You're not putting your dreams on hold because of this." He had already called his brother to borrow money, something he hadn't done in 15 years of supporting his family. Across town, Karen Matthews sat in her real estate office, feeling pleased with the attention her social media posts were getting. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications as more people shared her story. Some local news websites had even picked up the story, though they were careful not to name names. "You did the right thing, speaking up," her friend Janet assured her over lunch. Who knows what could have happened? But not everyone agreed. Karen's teenage son Tyler had been unusually quiet since the incident went viral. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, he finally spoke up. "Mom, do you remember when Coach Williams helped me with basketball last summer?" Tyler asked, pushing his food around his plate. "That was Marcus's son, the driver you accused. That's their dad." Karen felt a strange twist in her stomach. She remembered the summer coaching program clearly. She had even praised the volunteer coach for helping Tyler improve his game. The connection hadn't clicked until now. Meanwhile, Marcus Jr. was facing his own struggles at school. Some parents had seen Karen's posts and told their kids not to hang out with him, During basketball practice, he heard whispers and caught people staring. His father, who had never missed a game, wouldn't be able to attend the upcoming tournament because some parents had complained about feeling uncomfortable. The impact spread beyond just their families. The local rideshare drivers community, many of whom were minorities, started sharing their own stories of false accusations and prejudice. Some began installing extra cameras in their cars, while others stopped working night shifts altogether. Sarah's medical school dreams seemed to be slipping away. Even with her extra waitressing shifts, they were falling behind on bills. She spent her breaks between classes searching for additional part-time jobs, her medical textbooks gathering dust. "We got footage from every ride," Marcus explained to yet another reporter who called. "I've never had a single complaint in 15 years. My passengers' safety has always been my top priority." But the reporter seemed more interested in Karen's dramatic story than in Marcus's spotless record. The article that came out the next day used words like alleged and claimed, but still managed to make Marcus sound suspicious. At her real estate office, Karen was starting to notice some changes too. Some clients, particularly those from minority communities, had quietly taken their business elsewhere. Her colleagues were polite but distant. She overheard whispers in the break room that made her uncomfortable. That evening, as Marcus helped his son with homework, trying to maintain some normalcy in their lives, his phone rang. It was his elderly mother. "Son, I saw the news," she said, her voice heavy with years of similar experiences. "Remember what your father always said. The truth comes out in the wash." Marcus looked at his children, both trying to be strong despite their world being turned upside down. Sarah was falling asleep over her textbooks, exhausted from her double shift. Marcus Jr. was pretending not to be worried, but his basketball shoes remained untied. He didn't want his dad to know he needed new ones. What none of them realized was that the next day would bring an unexpected turn of events. Security camera footage from multiple businesses along Cedar Avenue was about to tell a very different story from Karen's dramatic accusations. On a busy Thursday morning, Officer Thompson sat at his desk reviewing security footage from the night of Karen's ride. His coffee went cold as he pieced together videos from street cameras, store security systems, and Marcus's dashboard camera. The story they told was very different from Karen's claims. "Chief, you need to see this," Thompson called to his supervisor. The footage showed Marcus's car following the well-lit detour route, passing other vehicles and pedestrians. Every turn was marked by proper signals, every stop complete and careful. Most importantly, several cameras showed Karen in the back seat, filming and talking on her phone, but clearly not in any danger. At the same time, local reporter Maria Gonzalez was doing her own investigation. She had interviewed 6 business owners along Cedar Avenue who confirmed the construction detour had been in place for weeks. "All the drivers use this route," said Joe Chen, owner of the corner market. "It's safer than sitting in construction traffic." Maria also discovered something interesting about Karen's past. This wasn't her first complaint. Over the past 2 years, she had filed similar reports against a Hispanic grocery store clerk, an African-American bank teller, and a Middle Eastern restaurant owner. Each time, her accusations have fallen apart under scrutiny. The story broke at noon. False accusation exposed. Security footage clears rideshare driver, read the headline on the local news website. Maria's thorough reporting included interviews with Marcus's regular passengers, maps showing the construction detour, and Karen's history of complaints. Sarah was in her biology class when her phone started buzzing with messages. Her hands shook as she read the news article. "Dad, have you seen this?" She texted Marcus, who was at home applying for temporary delivery jobs. Marcus sat down heavily in his kitchen chair as he read the article. Tears formed in his eyes when he saw the outpouring of support in the comments section. Regular passengers shared stories of his kindness, how he waited extra time for elderly passengers, helped with heavy groceries, and always ensured everyone's safety. At her real estate office, Karen watched in horror as her carefully constructed story crumbled. Her phone was exploding with notifications, but these were different from the supportive messages she received earlier. People were sharing the news article and tagging her in angry comments. "Mom?" Tyler's voice cracked as he called from school. "Everyone's talking about it. They're saying terrible things about you." Karen felt her stomach sink. She had never considered how her actions would affect her son. The rideshare company's investigation team worked quickly. By mid-afternoon, they had reviewed all the evidence and sent Marcus an official apology. His account was reactivated with compensation for lost wages. They'd also permanently banned Karen from their platform. Marcus's phone rang constantly with support from other drivers. The local drivers' association had started a fundraiser to help cover his lost wages and Sarah's tuition. Even his regular passengers contributed, leaving messages about how much they trusted and valued his service. At the police station, Officer Thompson officially closed the case. No evidence of any wrongdoing, he wrote in his report. Complaint appears to be fabricated. He added a note recommending that Karen be investigated for filing a false report. That evening, Karen sat alone in her living room, watching her professional and personal reputation dissolve on social media. Her real estate agency called, placing her on indefinite leave pending an investigation. Friends who had supported her accusations now distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Sarah and Marcus Jr. hugged their father tightly when the final news broadcast aired, showing all the security footage that proved his innocence. "I told you the truth always comes out," his mother said on the phone, her voice proud and relieved. What no one expected was Karen's teenage son Tyler's actions the next day. Unable to bear the guilt of knowing Marcus's family and watching his father's reputation be destroyed by a lie, he would make a decision that would force his mother to face the consequences of her prejudice in a very personal way. The morning after the truth came out, Tyler Matthews stood in front of Marcus Williams Jr.'s basketball practice. He had skipped his first period class, something he'd never done before, to catch his former teammate. His hands were shaking as he held his phone, which contained screenshots of all his mother's original social media posts. "I can help prove it was all a lie," Tyler told Marcus Jr., his voice trembling. "I have all her deleted posts and messages. She doesn't know I saved them." Across town, Karen sat in her empty real estate office, packing her personal items into a cardboard box. The agency had moved from indefinite leave to termination with immediate effect after 3 major clients pulled their listings, citing they couldn't work with someone who had shown such prejudice. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications, not from supporters this time, but from angry community members, local business owners, and even her own colleagues. The local news had run a follow-up story about her previous false complaints against other minority workers. Her carefully built reputation was falling apart piece by piece. Meanwhile, Marcus received an unexpected call from the city's transport authority. They wanted to feature him in their Excellence in Service campaign, highlighting his 15 years of outstanding work. The interviewer was particularly interested in how he had maintained his professionalism even while facing false accusations. "I just kept thinking about my kids," Marcus explained, his voice steady. "Every passenger in my car is somebody's loved one. They deserve to feel safe and respected, no matter what prejudices they might carry." Sarah's medical school dream was back on track. The community fundraiser had exceeded its goal, with many people adding messages of support along with their donations. Her classmates who had been distant during the scandal now approached her with apologies and offers of help with missed study sessions. But the biggest shock came when Tyler walked into the police station that afternoon, accompanied by Marcus Jr. and Marcus Sr. The teenager handed over his phone, containing not just his mother's deleted posts, but also previous messages where she had bragged about getting other minority workers in trouble. "My mom needs help," Tyler said, his voice breaking. "She needs to understand what she's doing to people." Officer Thompson listened carefully, adding Tyler's evidence to the growing file against Karen. That evening, Karen's social circle crumbled further. Her friend Janet, who had initially supported her story, publicly distanced herself. "I was wrong to encourage her behavior," Janet wrote in a public post. "This incident has made me examine my own biases." The local newspaper published an editorial about the incident, using it as an example of how false accusations based on racial prejudice could destroy innocent lives. They interviewed Marcus's elderly passengers, who spoke about feeling safe and respected in his car, even during late-night rides. Karen sat alone in her kitchen, reading the article. Her house, usually busy with friends dropping by, was silent. Tyler had asked to stay with his father for a while, unable to face the tension at home. Her social media accounts, once full of support and business connections, were now filled with angry messages and unfollows. Maybe it's time to talk to someone, her sister suggested gently over the phone, a professional who can help you understand why you did this. For the first time, Karen felt a crack in her defensive wall. At the Williams household, life was slowly returning to normal. Marcus was back at work, with more ride requests than ever. Sarah had caught up on her studies, and Marcus Jr.'s basketball team was preparing for their tournament. The family had been through a storm but had emerged stronger. What no one knew was that the next day would bring an unexpected visitor to the Williams' door. Tyler's brave action would set in motion a chain of events that would force Karen to confront her prejudices in a way she never expected, leading to a moment of truth that would change both families forever. 1 week after Tyler's visit to the police station, Karen sat in Dr. Peterson's office, a therapist specializing in bias counseling. The room was quiet except for the soft ticking of a clock and the occasional sound of Karen wiping her tears. "Let's talk about why you felt threatened that night," Dr. Peterson said gently, watching as Karen struggled with her emotions. "What was it about Marcus that actually scared you?" Karen stared at her hands, remembering how tightly she had clutched her purse that night. I just assumed," she whispered, the weight of her prejudice finally sinking in. "I've always done that, haven't I? Just assumed the worst about people who look different from me." At home, Tyler had packed more of his clothes to stay at his father's house. Before leaving, he left something on Karen's bed, a photo from last summer's basketball program. In it, Marcus was teaching Tyler proper shooting form, both of them smiling widely. Karen picked up the photo, her hands trembling. Meanwhile, Marcus received an unexpected email from the local community center. They wanted him to speak at their upcoming forum on racial bias and its impact on the community. Sarah helped him prepare his speech, drawing from their family's experiences not just from this incident, but from years of dealing with prejudice. "Dad, remember when you taught me to always be twice as professional, twice as careful?" Sarah asked as they worked on the speech. Marcus nodded, remembering all the extra precautions he had always taken, the dash cameras, the detailed records, the extreme politeness, just to protect himself from situations exactly like what Karen had created. Karen's therapy sessions continued twice a week. Dr. Peterson helped her explore the roots of her prejudices, tracing them back to her own upbringing and the subtle biases she had inherited from her family and social circle. "Your son showed remarkable courage," Dr. Peterson noted during one session. "He chose truth over comfort, justice over family loyalty. What does that tell you about the values he's developed despite your influences?" The question hit Karen hard. She thought about Tyler, who had grown up to be more enlightened than she was. She remembered how he had befriended Marcus Jr. during basketball, never once showing the prejudices she had taught him through her actions. One evening, Karen found herself parked outside the community center where Marcus was giving his speech. She hadn't planned to come, but something drew her there. Through the window, she could see the packed room, people of all backgrounds listening intently as Marcus spoke about his experience. The hardest part wasn't the accusation itself, Marcus was saying, his voice clear and strong. "It was explaining to my children why someone would do this. How do you tell your kids that some people will always see them as a threat, no matter how hard they work, no matter how honest they are?" Karen felt each word like a physical blow. For the first time, she truly understood the ripple effects of her actions, how they had affected not just Marcus, but his children, her own son, and countless others in the community. After the speech, she sat in her car and wrote a letter she had been struggling to write for days. It wasn't just an apology. It was an acknowledgement of her prejudice, her privilege, and her responsibility to change. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she wrote. "I'm telling you I understand now what I did, and I'm working to change who I am. My son helped me see the truth about myself, and I can't unsee it." That night, as Karen placed the letter in an envelope, she felt something shift inside her. The comfortable walls of prejudice she had built around herself were crumbling, leaving her bare but somehow lighter. What she didn't know was that her letter would reach the Williams family at a crucial moment, leading to an unexpected meeting that would challenge both families to move beyond the pain toward something neither of them expected. 2 months after the incident, Marcus stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie. Today wasn't a regular workday. He was heading to a community reconciliation meeting at the local church. Karen had asked to meet with him and his family through Dr. Peterson, who would facilitate the conversation. You don't have to go, Dads, Sarah said, watching him from the doorway. But Marcus knew this meeting was important, not just for Karen's healing, but for the entire community's growth. Karen arrived at the church early, her hands clutching both her letter and a thick folder. Tyler came with her, the first time he'd agreed to be seen publicly with his mother since the incident. They sat in the church hall, which had been arranged with chairs in a circle. When the Williams family walked in, Marcus, his wife Linda, Sarah, and Marcus Jr., Karen felt her chest tighten. This was harder than any therapy session. These were the real people she had hurt with her lies and prejudice. Before we begin, Dr. Peterson said once everyone was seated, remember that we're here to listen and understand each other. This is about healing, not punishment. Karen spoke first, her voice shaking. She opened the folder and pulled out newspaper clippings, not just about this incident, but about other times she had complained about minority workers. I've kept every article, she said. Every time I tried to hurt someone because of my prejudice, I need to own all of it. She turned to Marcus's children. I could have destroyed your futures, she acknowledged, tears rolling down her cheeks. Sarah, your medical school dreams, Marcus Jr.'s basketball career. I never thought about how my lies could affect innocent young people. Tyler then stood up, walking over to Marcus Jr. I saved all Mom's deleted posts and messages because I couldn't bear the guilt of staying silent, he explained. You're my friend, and I watched my mom try to destroy your dad's life. Marcus listened quietly, his hand holding Linda's tightly. When it was his turn to speak, his voice was steady. I've been driving for 15 years, he said. Every day, I worry that someone's prejudice could end my career, hurt my family. But I keep working, keep serving, keep hoping that people can change. Karen then shared what she had learned in therapy, about her deep-seated prejudices, about how she had used her privilege as a weapon, about the shame she now felt. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she repeated what she had written in her letter. I'm asking for a chance to show that people can change. To everyone's surprise, Marcus Jr. spoke up. Tyler stood up for what was right, even though it meant going against his own mother, he said. That's real courage. Dr. Peterson guided the conversation as both families shared their feelings, fears, and hopes. Karen learned how Marcus's mother had taught him to be extra careful, always polite, always professional, knowing that one person's prejudice could destroy everything he had built. Near the end of the meeting, Karen pulled out one last item from her folder. A check. This can undo what I did, she said, but I want it to go toward Sarah's medical school fund. Marcus shook his head. Keep it, he said. Instead, use that money to fund bias training programs at your old real estate agency. Help prevent others from making the same mistakes. As they were leaving, Tyler and Marcus Jr. made plans to play basketball again. Sarah offered to help Tyler with his college applications. Small steps toward healing were beginning. Karen watched as both families walked out of the church together, not as friends, exactly, but as people who had moved through a difficult journey toward understanding. She had lost her job, many of her friends, and her reputation, but she had gained something more valuable, the ability to see her own prejudices and the courage to change them. That evening, as Marcus drove his regular route, he noticed something different. His passengers seemed more aware, more respectful. Karen's story had changed not just her, but it sparked important conversations throughout the community about prejudice, truth, and the power of accepting responsibility for one's actions.